so exhausted. Like I'd be stumbling back to the truck. And if I was out for any length of time, like I'd get super anxious to the point that I'd be like on the verge of tears, just being like, what? I just want to be back to the vehicle. And it was crazy because as soon as I was back in that vehicle and I felt safe, like my energy levels would just totally just bounce right up.
But what was your recovery like? Because you had the shoulder, both shoulders and your right thigh, right?
So I had like bite marks. Yeah, definitely over both shoulders a lot. Onto my forearms, like pretty much my full thigh, across my back, a little bit on my front, not bad, but a little bit on my front, on my hip on the right side, and then like the scratch mark down my head. A lot of like crazy amount of muscle damage. I would, my arms were just shredded would be kind of how I would describe it, to a certain degree from what I've been told, of course, like,
any broken bones?
Yeah. On my left shoulder, like where I had heard the snapping, if you think of the shoulder blade kind of just sitting on your shoulder, there's the little bone that comes across called a acromion. It's like a little hook. And then that attaches to your clavicle. And so my clavicle had been pulled off, the acromion fractured into 3, and then the deltoid muscle was detached. So that basically meant like they weren't sure I'd ever have movement over a 90 degree, lifting my arm above 90 degrees on my left side. But thankfully, by some miracle, the nerves were not, they were compromised. They didn't do anything. Like, I don't think, like I was attacked early October and I don't think I had any movement, any nerve activity on that side until like the following, like January, near the end of January was when I finally like was able to move my arm like a finger width higher. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. So that would have been a year plus.
No, that would have been like 4 months after. Okay. Yeah. Or whatever it was. But yeah, I ended up having, my first surgery was 7 hours. I ended up having 5 surgeries in total. Like they had said to me at the time, like you hit an operating room record. And I was like, well, what does that mean? Might as well, right? Like first bear attack, bear encounter, first broken bone, first like hospital stay. Like what did I hit? Might as well add to the list. And they were like, well, we used 25 staplers. And I was like, I didn't know what that meant. Yeah. And I think it wasn't until maybe my second or my third surgery, when I was waiting to go into the operating room, I was talking with the nurse and who was attending me. And I said, like, what's in a stapler? And she's like, well, there's 35 staples in a stapler. So between the misfires and the stapling down blankets and also just like, the staples crisscrossing my limbs, I had probably over 800 staples like crisscrossing my body. And that doesn't even include the hundreds of yards, I'm sure, of internal suturing and like thread that they used to just hold everything together and to put it in the right spot. So yeah, like I kind of want to describe it as like my arms look like I had railroad crossings or railroad tracks all along them. Mm-hmm. And like I had a couple spots where I had lost like huge chunks of skin where the skin had been torn off. They did have to cut out quite a lot of muscle just because it was no longer viable because the circulation had been severed. So yeah, a lot of like muscle was just removed since it wasn't going to survive. And like I had open wounds until I think the following February was when they finally scarred in sufficiently that I didn't have to have dressings anymore. But yeah, like I had to learn how to move my limbs again. Like I think it took a week before I could reach up and like extending my neck to the fullest length, I'd actually be able to touch my chin. And yeah, like on the right side, it was because the muscle tissue had been just so traumatized. It was quite painful and, like you basically had to force the muscle fibers into relearning the motions. Mm-hmm. It did not come back naturally. And then on my left side, because of the broken bones, I was like my arm was in a sling until like 6 weeks after. And then at that stage, thankfully, like there was muscle tearing on that side, but not to the same degree that had been on the right side. So it was a little quicker to get that arm moving, although it took substantial time before I was able to do any exercises to lift it. So I was in physio, I think, till the following June, probably because I'm very stubborn, and with my high pain tolerance, I was very persistent. I was a very keen physiotherapy student, well, patient, I guess I should say. And I was like, bring it on. Like, I'll do whatever I need to do to get my range of motion back. And worked with some fantastic healthcare professionals. And I ended up, basically graduating with my full range of motion, or as much as I was going to get back, like from a treatment perspective with like a physiotherapist, back to what is standard.
Yeah, unbelievable.
In June. But I would like kind of caveat that with the fact that like the most weight I could lift above my head was like 1 pound, and like I do like 3 reps and I'd be wiped. Like I couldn't do anything else. I was done. So it'd be really funny because like the physiotherapist said to me, okay, like, you know, now it's up to you. Sign up for a gym, and like that's going to be your new treatment plan. And like, I remember being at the gym lifting 1 pound weights, and everyone's kind of looking at you, and I'm like, oh yeah, like here we go, another 3 pound, 3 lifts on a 1 pound weight. I'm pretty sure it looked a little ridiculous, but so like I think for me, so much of my recovery was physical for the first like 8 months, 10 months, that I didn't have to deal with any of the emotional repercussions until like at that stage, which was contrary to like everyone else around me, right? Everyone else was dealing with the emotional implications like right off the hop. So it was challenging, right? Because I think there was expectations that I should be experiencing certain things, or I should be, having more difficulty going through dealing with the emotional repercussions early on in my recovery. And I felt fine, which like, I think once I got past that initial hurdle of a lot of the physical stuff, like I think I'll be dealing probably with the physical repercussions like for my whole life. But once I got past that initial physical piece, then that's when the emotional trauma started to kick in.
Yeah, I imagine the physical just gave you something to put your mind towards. You're so busy working towards getting better that you just didn't have time to...
Or the energy.
Like, 1 pound weights after 3 reps. Yeah. You don't have a lot of energy.
Well, and you're just so drained by the energy to heal, the energy to like do your exercises, to just like do everyday tasks. Like, I was so reliant on people helping me. Like for the first little while, couldn't go to the washroom on my own, couldn't feed myself, I couldn't dress myself for quite a long time, let alone be able to live independently. So it took a long time to get to that stage where you were able to do that stuff on your own. And when you were, it takes a lot of energy out of you. Yeah.
Who were the biggest supports for you during your recovery?
Oh, I had so many. I was so lucky on that front. Like, I think, my recovery would be entirely different if I didn't have the support system I did. My family was huge. My parents were huge. And my workplace was really big too, especially when I decided to return to work. If it wasn't for them and my parents really pursuing having that happen, I don't think I could have done it on my own, just because of the amount of energy it would take to fight the system to get back, because they don't make it easy for you to return to work. And the healthcare system was fantastic. Like, I worked, with some great people along the way that were, very encouraging, but also like were willing to like give me the reality, right? Like, I didn't want to be babied. I wanted them to be tough on me. I wanted them to really like help me move forward. And they were very supportive of that, which was huge. Because it wasn't like they weren't going to be too gentle. Like there was times where it was like, this is going to hurt and you're not going to like it, but this is what you need to do. And I'd be like, okay,
bring it on. I just fought a bear.
Bring it on, right? So that made a huge deal.
Did you get most of your surgeries in Thunder Bay?
Yeah, all of them were done. Initially, they thought they'd have to fly me to Toronto, but thankfully, like, I consistently had all sense of feeling and movement in all my hands and feet, that they decided, let's try to do it in Thunder Bay. So yeah, great surgeons and great, support systems there too.
That's great. Okay, let's dive into the psychological aspect, because this is the part that I'm most excited about.
Okay.
So walk me through the psychological journey, because you said for the first, I think it's 8 months, you said it was mostly just focusing on the physical, getting over the physical, and then the psychological recovery kind of began, right? So,
yep.
So walk me through what that looked like. Like, how did you know, like, now I'm going to have to fight a psychological battle?
I think the probably the biggest first piece of awareness was when I tried to start going out into the woods again. And I noticed, like, I do just like a super short hike, and like I'd be dead on my feet. Like, I was so exhausted. Like, I'd be stumbling back to the truck. And like, if I was out for any length of time, like, I'd get super anxious, and like to the point that like I'd be like on the verge of tears, like just being like, what? Like I just want to be back to the vehicle. And it was crazy because like as soon as I was back in that vehicle and I felt safe, like my energy levels would just like totally just bounce right up. And so a lot of physiological changes that like I could not like mentally control. They were just happening all on their own. A lot of hyper arousal. And I was diagnosed with PTSD down the line, although I had to fight to have that diagnosis come about. But like the way I like to describe it is I went skydiving after
You're
incident,
amazing.
like the following summer. Well, you kind of like, there's this new appreciation for life, right?
Yeah.
Like this new zest, like you're like, screw it. Why am I waiting? You know what? Like you never know when your last day is going to be. So, I was like, yeah, like I want to go skydiving. And, so I went here in Thunder Bay, and it was interesting because I remember like, you know, you get all strapped in, you're in the plane, and then like, you know, you're flying up there, and then next thing you know, the doors open and I'm like on the edge of the plane, and then like I'm jumping out, and I never had any adrenaline throughout the whole thing.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, woo, jumping out of the plane. This is fun.
Yeah.
Like this is weird. Why am I not feeling adrenaline? Yet like if I was in the bush and like a twig snapped, I was full fight or flight, like, and just the level of adrenaline pumping through my system was just unreal. So it definitely messed with my whole body to a large degree. It wasn't reacting normally. And probably in some cases that wasn't necessarily a good thing. Especially, you know, if I'm doing high risk activities, like jumping out of a plane, I should have a little bit of an adrenaline rush. So yeah, I think like it took a long time, and I would say like there's even to this day I'm still learning things, and I think a lot of it comes from like interaction with others or shared experiences or you know, someone sharing a story, and then I'm like, oh, like I can relate, like I can recognize those emotional triggers, or I can recognize a similar pattern in myself. But I think one of the things that was tricky for me is like I had been so reliant on people, like not only in the bear encounter, but like in the recovery, that like I didn't want help. Like the last thing I wanted was to be protected. Like I wanted to be able to like not necessarily do it independently, but like have some ability to take it on of my own, or have a little bit more confidence in myself to take it on my own. Cause I think a lot of that confidence in myself had shattered like as a result of like the whole process and the whole trauma and the recovery piece. And so like I made a decision that I was like, well, you know, I had kind of been debating because I had really enjoyed my experience with the physiotherapy. In part, just I really liked how it was like it was an open gym that we like, I was, like I'd be like on the hand bike by a lady who was 95, also on a hand bike, and we'd be swapping stories like as we're working out. Right. So I had found it like a really rewarding, but like open and just like not necessarily team building, but just encouraging atmosphere. And I remember thinking like, I wanted to give my experience purpose, rather than it just be something that I do on my own all by myself. Like I wanted to give it, kind of empower myself by giving it a purpose. And so I had contemplated like possibly going back to school for physiotherapy, but I was a good student in school, but when you're not like intending to, like, physiotherapy is one of those ones, as you probably know, like very high, like you need very high scores. Yeah. And that wasn't really my goal in university. I was like enjoying myself. I was have a social life. Yeah. And I didn't really necessarily intend to do a specialized program such as like physiotherapy. So I looked more at doing extra opportunities versus focusing on just getting high grades. So for me, like I applied, but I was like, by the time that I have to like go through the work to just make sure my grades are sufficient to be competitive, like with like a person coming right out of their undergrad, like,
it's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, it's going to take some time because
huge investment, especially
if I'm still working. Like, I'm only going to want to do so many courses in a semester in order to boost my grades. And like to get any kind of like bump in your GPA, it just takes a lot of courses.
Mm-hmm. and a lot of effort
and a lot of money. Yeah. I was like, do I want to spend this money? I don't know, because like I still was very passionate about like wildlife and the work that I was doing with the government. So I decided instead that I would take a year off, and I wanted to force myself out of my comfort zone. So I went traveling for 6 months, and I chose countries all without bears. I was like, we're just going to remove that from the situation. Yeah. We'll deal with that part later. But I I traveled with friends, or I would meet up with like people I knew across the world and went and visited folks. But a lot of it was about like, okay, you're on your own. Like, you want to do this hike, you got to do it on your own. You got to build your own confidence in order to do that. So I did a lot of things just to kind of try to rebuild my independence, rebuild my confidence in myself, get some separation, kind of also try to decide what I wanted to do with my life, where I wanted to go, what did I want to pursue? So I think that helped a lot. I did for a period of time also struggle with some really bad depression associated with the event, which was challenging. I think kind of trying to figure out what the source of that was, and how to like moderate it. Like I would say my respect for people who like deal with mental health on a regular basis, like even just something like I've been blessed enough that I haven't had to deal with anxiety all my life or depression or those kind of things. And just even going through, bits of it where it was a little bit more severe as a result of this encounter and this trauma, huge respects for what they go through. Cause it's amazing the different person you become and how like at stages you don't have any control over it, or there's just, whether it's isolation or you isolate yourself or, but also just like, I remember just even when I was in the depression, just not feeling anything.
Yeah.
And not really caring. Like if I was going to do anything, I'd just try to get a response out of someone. And usually it wasn't through a nice way.
Yeah. Depression and anxiety, sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to jump in here for a second.
Yeah.
I talk to people who've never experienced it, and depression in particular. And there's this misconception, just get over it. Just like stop being sad. And it's like, the best way I've heard it put, it's like your brain is working against you, right? Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say I've ever been depressed, but I remember this ex-girlfriend dumped me. And for about a month straight, I was very sad. Like motivation was at all-time low. I didn't want to get out of bed. Every smile felt fake. I didn't want to eat. And it's just like your your brain starts to work against you, and it's just to motivate yourself to do anything becomes so difficult. So it's funny because I wouldn't consider myself prone to depression. Just like you probably wouldn't consider yourself prone to it. But it's kind of, in a way, a blessing to be exposed to kind of what that dark side is like, because it gives you new respect for people who struggle with it all the time, right?
Oh, totally. Well, and even coming out of it, like I remember just like even something as simple as like the shame for how I behaved, right? And having to process that and like recognize it in myself and acknowledge that like was very challenging. Because it's not an easy thing to do when like you were like so out of not able to control like your actions to a large degree, or like, yeah, like it just at the time, like you didn't even see how you were impacting people or anything. Like it just, it amazed me. Just how much it kind of resonated, I guess. And I think that kind of expanded, not on like, it opened my eyes to different parts of my trauma, but it also like, it encouraged me even more in the sense that like, I wanted to do something with it. Like I wanted to do something with this trauma. And I've always been lucky that I've even been able to talk about it. Like that's never been an issue for me. I would say over the years, like talking about the actual event itself has never bugged me. Like I might get like a little flushed or excited and I can feel my stomach doing butterflies, but not really any anxiety about sharing the story. I would say like by nature, I'm a bottler. So like through time, I've had to learn how to open up or even acknowledge the more emotional pieces of like what I went through, what they meant for me, or even just like try to figure out what it means. Like there was probably a lot of times where I was just like I didn't even necessarily recognize the emotion for what it was or what those feelings were until it was like later on down the line, maybe years down the line. So I think as time's gone on, I've from being able to see others share or have the courage to speak about those things, I've been able to gain that voice because it's not something that for me comes naturally. It definitely does not come naturally. And I think I've seen the power of how much like I was really lucky to, as a part of work, join a peer support group, which is basically an organization that's set up of a bunch of peers all within our government teams. And when there's an incident or a trauma, like we're available for people who are impacted to talk to. And it's not like official medical help or anything. We're not trained as healthcare professionals. We're basically there as just a listening ear. But it's interesting because like a part of our training is to like open up and share ourselves, right? And to see, like, it took me time to be able to do that, but to see other people like willing to open themselves to a complete stranger and just trust them sufficiently to like unload whatever was bugging them, like whatever it might be, like, and then to see how much of a weight that lifted off their shoulders or just how it changed their demeanor or like how they were feeling or, you know, just the relief in some cases. Just pretty amazed, like honored to be like witness to that, but also like amazed to see it happen and make me want to try to pursue it, right? Like to be able to be that person that's like able to speak about whatever and like put that out in the open. So I think that was really powerful for me when trying to process what I was going through and like really delve into the different layers or the different pieces. And I think that will always be something like as time goes on that I learn, because I find for me, it's very much triggered by hearing others and then just being like, I connect with that. And how do I connect with that thing that someone is sharing? Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you went to therapy or if you saw a therapist, but it sounds like this peer support group was...
It was kind of therapy in itself.
I wouldn't even say
not
it was
official.
kind of therapy, but it sounded like it was definitely therapy.
Yeah. I did try, and you know what? I have a friend who I treasure dearly who's a recovering alcoholic, and she gave me some of the best advice. And I don't even remember when she told me this along my recovery, but she said to me, like, she had been asking like how I was doing, how like things were going, like, you know, with the trauma of it all, right? Like emotionally. And she was never one to like avoid the tough questions, which is one reason I love her. And she had said to me, like, you know, Laura, she's like, because I had said, oh, I've had some real duds. Like I've had some pretty like frustrating encounters, and like really disappointing, or just ones where I just walked away being like, no way in hell, like, am I ever coming back to this person? And like, I'm a pretty patient person. So for me to get to that stage, like, I think one thing I've realized through my whole incident is that, like, it does change your personality, I think, to a little degree. Like my tolerance for like unsafe situations or people goofing off is probably very short compared to what it used to be. Although some might say I'm still very tolerant. I find I'm also like quicker to anger than I probably ever was, which is saying something, because I'm also a person that takes a lot to anger. But I remember this friend saying to me, like, you know what, Laura, like, she's like, don't give up. She said, it took me 12 people before I found someone that I actually connected with. She's like, it is not easy to find someone that can help you. And she said, like, just keep at it, was basically what she said. And I remember being like, wow, like 12 people. How did you have the courage to even like reach out? Because I am not a person, like, I would say, for me to ask for help is like a step, because that is not something that comes natural. I am more inclined to do it on my own than I am.
I'm picking that up about you.
More inclined to do it on my own than to ask for help, like whatever it might be. Like, I'm willing to like drop anything in a minute to help someone else, but like to ask for that help myself is not very easy.
Some would call that determined, some would call it stubborn, and I think it depends on the context, right?
Very much both, for sure. And like, I would say, like, I had some interactions where, like, you know, like they were trying, like, you know, the therapist was trying, but like really just did not get me, and was concerned with things that were not my concerns, and not concerned about the things I was concerned about or would come forward with. So just disconnected on that part. And I remember at other stages, like, you know, I remember relaying some of my emotions, and like how, you know, when I was like going through depression, how like I was pretty sure some of that was associated with guilt, and explaining that situation out, and then like being told like, well, that was stupid, like you shouldn't have felt that way, and just being like, well, I'm done with you, like
on to the next
all
one.
Respect gone, like and that being someone that was supposed to be like my main point of contact for services, and just being like, no desire to go back. And I don't think they intended it that way. And maybe it was just a slip, maybe because they were surprised by what I was saying or what I was opening up about. But it really put a sour taste in my mouth for wanting to go to anyone. So I think that's part of the reason why I did like my little round the world trip, like just doing my own thing, forcing it into my own comfort zones. Cause I was like, well, you know what, I'm going to get myself, you know, more to a level where I'm comfortable to pursue. And like, I think a lot with like just even friends and family, and having conversations with them about where my comfort level is. And like, if we're going to go camping together, well, there's some things that I want us to be like cognizant about, right?
Let's lay this out on the table so that we're all on the same page.
Yeah. Or like if we're camping, like, we're going to store our food somewhere else. And like, I don't want you to just go running off down the trail. Like someone has to stick with me if I'm going to feel safe. And so, I think, I've been able to make a lot of milestones, in that way. And then just interactions have been good. But I've also like later on down the line, like actually in relation to like a partner being concerned about like taking me out, like, they asked for me to reach out to like make a plan, right? If I was to have like concerns, or if I was to have a panic attack or something. And I was like, I really don't think I'm going to have a panic attack. Like really didn't, I was thinking they were overly concerned, but whatever. Okay. If that makes you feel more comfortable, like, yeah, I'm happy to try to work it out. Right. And I remember it was interesting. I ended up like just using like services that were provided through my workplace, and like it was over the phone and just chatting with someone. And it was neat to have conversations with that individual, because she, like, I think we both decided that, like, yeah, no, like, I wasn't really like at risk of panicking, but like I was interested about the process, right? In the sense of like, what are steps that if I was to get anxious or do that kind of thing, like, what are steps that I could take, or, what are things that are typically used to like treat PTSD or anxiety or that kind of stuff. Because a lot of the conversation she would have with me was like, okay, so like, is there anything that you're wanting to do that you're saying no because you have like anxiety about bears? Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, like I'm basically saying yes to everything. There might be conditions about how we go about it, or I want to do it slowly. Like I don't want to go out like 500 kilometers into the wilderness in the middle of nowhere right off the hop. Like I want to like maybe camp by our vehicle first. Mm-hmm. And then like from there, like we can go a kilometer in, and then from there, maybe it's a little farther. Like, so like she said, well, if that changes, like maybe that's where, you really want to focus your attention. But we did talk a lot about, like different ways to process things, different ways to look at things. And like, if I am trying to deal with something that's in relation to anxiety, like, can we take a step approach to it? Like kind of almost identify it like it's like a ladder, mm-hmm. That you're taking steps up the ladder to get to whatever your goal might be, right? If you're building up to it. And then I think I found it actually more helpful to process. Like one of the things I think I've found more challenging is like having conversations about how I've seen my experience impact others. And where they've like struggled with it. Mm-hmm. And I think that piece, it was helpful talking to them about that. 'Cause I was like, is there anything I can do to help them? Yeah. Right. Or like, with this, like, 'cause to a certain degree, I wouldn't blame myself for it, but there is probably some guilt associated with seeing someone else kind of, be impacted in relation to just the events that went around with my bear attack. So,
like how your bear attack impacted other people. Like the partner that would have.
Oh yeah. Like how it would have impacted him, or like even just like the community at large, like mm-hmm. was like worried about going for their walks with their dogs, sure. Or, like I think, yeah, even seeing it impact my family and their decisions, or, just a lot of things. Or
because the last thing you want to do is taint anyone's experience with the outdoors now, right?
Totally.
Because you love it so much.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So it was neat talking, and I really enjoyed. Like, I think I ended up talking to her a few times just about like different things in association to that, and she gave me some material to read over, and I've read into some of it. Like, I love reading, but I also do so much at work that I'm sometimes like, I need to read like a really ridiculously silly novel. Yeah. Because I just can't read anything heavy when I'm at home. Like it just kind of, I think opened my eyes to like some of the processes there, and kind of seeing how I had fit into it just naturally because of my own choices, like along the line. But maybe where I could have done things differently, or maybe just having a better understanding of like, oh, maybe that's why like I started to feel more comfortable in this situation, because I was naturally maybe doing some of those steps that had been like would have been suggested had I gotten that right off the hop.
For sure. Well, my natural inclination to your experience is to just overanalyze the heck out of it, right? And, they always say hindsight is 20/20. And I mean, you could go back and what if I, had bear spray, or what if I had the knife on my hip, or what if I did this, or what if I did that? But with all I know about bears, and with all you know about bears, and what most people know about black bears in particular, it's just what happened to you was a freak accident. And it's just like, would I say 1 in 100? Would I say 1 in 1,000? I'd probably even go bigger than that. I'd say 1 in 10,000 encounters with a bear would end up like that.
like I do like, honestly, I like to look at it from the perspective that they do happen. It's definitely not like unheard of, but it is very uncommon.
For
like
sure.
the majority of chances and in your interactions with bear are going to not be of this nature.
Yeah. And I think your struggle is going to be, how do I take this super unlikely thing that happened and put it in its proper place as a super unlikely thing that happened? Like going outside, going for a hike, and just being in the right mind space to know that like bears are out here. Even if I come across one, it is unlikely that bear is going to treat me the same way that last one did. I think
totally.
that's going to be your...
Well, and I think if I do it in ways that, like each experience is going to build add into the inventory, right? Mm-hmm. So like the more encounters I have, probably the more non-predatory they're going to be, so that it's less, right?
Yeah.
And who knows? Like, I think I've had some close ones. I think, if anything, like they give me maybe the creepy, crawly feeling to a certain degree, especially if it's a bear that's used to humans. Because there is some awareness that, like, they know how powerful they are. Mm-hmm. And, like, I think if you were to push their buttons, like, yeah, they'll defend themselves. Like, there's no hesitation on that front. But definitely, certainly a respect for that. Like, they're not something to goof around with. Like, definitely, like, not feeding bears or avoiding that, or like making sure you have a clean campsite or whatever it might be, or putting your toiletries away from your tent so you don't have to worry about it. Like that, I think it's very common things that you can interact with that. I think it's more of like, when I think about the whole event, I've been very lucky that I've always been a person that like, shit happens. It happens. I don't need to question it. It's done. Like it's that event has occurred. How do I move forward? That's very much, I would say, been my perspective over life, and whatever goes down. Sometimes they're good things, sometimes they're bad things, but whatever, like the event has occurred and you move forward. So I think that has helped me to a degree, because like, I think I was comfortable with the actions I took. Whether they were the best actions, who knows? I think you can always assess that one way, up one side and down the other. Yeah. But I think I'm comfortable with the decisions I made at that time, and moving forward from it. Like, what's the best way that I can build this into character and a strength?
Yeah. Well, one thing that made me certain that I had to talk to you was that I was told you still go camping. I was told that, we're sitting in your kitchen and I'm looking in your living room and there's this bear thing on the wall. So like you got this bear.
Yeah, the conservation officer, when I was lying on the field, said like, when I get this bear, Laura, do you want a bear rug? And I was like, yeah, I'll take a bear rug. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, he gave that to me, actually.
So I'm looking at the very bear that probably was the reason for one of the worst days of your life. Like, you could look at it that way, but you choose to walk past that guy every single day. And I'm looking at him and he's quite sizable. But yeah, one of the reasons, this is the very reason why I felt like I needed to talk to you, because this exact same situation could have happened to somebody else, and we would all understand if they panicked or worried about stepping outside their house every day for the rest of their lives. But I find it incredible that you step out of your house, yes, but you also go back into bear country. And you also have that very bear living on your wall. That is incredible. And I think I wondered what it was. And just getting to know you through your story, it kind of tells me you've got this fight about you. And it was apparent during the bear attack that you were never hysterical. From what you're telling me, you were never hysterical during the process. You always had like an optimism about the event, which kind of, I guess, is tied to hope, which is tied to why maybe you have the strength that you do. Because I think you're a pretty incredible person for you had your lows, right? But I think it's incredible how you've come out of that situation.
Yeah, I would say I was very lucky. I did have a moment. I remember like right after my coworker had come in and like the bear dropped me and my coworker was facing off with the bear behind me. I did have a moment where I remember wanting to break down, like just being so incredibly relieved, like totally aware that I was still very much in the situation and the bear might come back, but being so incredibly relieved, just to have help arrive and wanting to break down in tears. And I remember thinking to myself, like, Laura, you're like scattered, in all likelihood, scattered parts of you are scattered across the forest floor. Like, you look like shit. If I was a person coming into this, like, I like the pressure to like that would freak me out to have to like look at me.
Yeah.
So I remember thinking like, if you're going to get out of this and your coworker's going to help you get out of this, like you got to pull it together. Cause if you're in mass hysteria, like that's not going to help anyone. Like he's not going to be able to look at you and not be concerned. Like, like I kind of thought to myself, you know what, if you want to cry, we can do it later on. Wow. We got to like pull it together. Cause if you're going to get out of this alive, you have to like be calm. You have to be in control. So it wasn't that it wasn't a possibility. It totally could have gone the other way. But I think just the logic side of my brain was like, you just don't have the time or the flexibility to do that right now. And I think just the relief or just having the help helped with that. Like, it might have been an entirely different situation if I had been on my own.
For sure.
So that definitely made a difference. And I do think like when I think of my recovery as a whole, like, yeah, I would think I'm a fairly stubborn and determined individual. Very optimistic individual. And like, I even remember the conservation officer asking me, because we're close friends now. Like later on, like after that bear was off of you, like, did it even cross your mind that you might not make it out of the bush? And I was like, no. I was like, okay, we're going to make it to the hospital. Like it never even crossed my mind that I might not make it to the hospital, which definitely probably had a lot to do with why I survived. Because I was told if I had been out in the bush like another 20 minutes, I wouldn't have made it. So,
Unreal.
I think that hope, that optimism certainly helped. And yeah, it wasn't, I don't like, besides that one instance of thinking over like the fact that I might not make it, I didn't have it again, which definitely made a difference, I think, in my ability to get out of there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the relationship you have with this guy that came to your rescue.
My coworker?
Yeah. So, was he a conservation officer?
No. Okay. He was just he was working as a technician, a resource technician with the government at the time.
Yeah. And have you what was your was it? I don't want to say was it cool, or what was it like going over the experience with him? Because he's probably the only other person who knows exactly how you felt.
Well, I would say actually maybe not, because we did it at such different times. For him, like, I think it hit him right away, and I probably didn't handle it very well when I think back to it. Like, I remember him saying, I'd kind of like to talk about this, and I'd be like, you're welcome to talk. Like, I'm happy to listen, but like, I have nothing to share. Like, I'm not feeling the same. I feel okay emotionally. Like, I'm literally dealing with the physical ramifications, like mentally, like I don't feel like the same. So I think it was some like unawareness on my part.
Yeah.
And like, I definitely don't beat myself up for it, but I do feel I probably say I didn't handle it very, very well. And in part of that, I think was was just so focused on the physical. I didn't even necessarily understand what like saying that might have meant. So yeah, I don't think we've ever actually really had a heart to heart to like he's aware that I speak about it publicly. And like he's super humble about it all. Like obviously super thankful for everything he did that day. And his support afterwards was great. And like, we're still friends. Like, and you know, every once in a while, we don't see each other too often, but every once in a while we might bump into each other in like the farmer's market or something. It's like, hey, it's been so long. Like we really need to do that dinner that we've been meaning to do for like ages. And it's always kind of a random, okay, let's catch up in like this next like 30 minutes since we haven't seen each other in months. Yeah, like unfortunately, I wasn't there for him during his struggle. I think he had to find support elsewhere. And for me, when I hit mine, like I did not want, like I wanted to do it on my own. Or if I was not going to do it on my own, I wanted to do it with someone who was outside and objective and not worried about me.
I find that very interesting because usually people find the most comfort in talking to people that have gone through what they've gone through, and he was there right with you. So I find it interesting that you would rather have talked, or it was easier for you to go elsewhere for, I guess, comfort from the situation.
Well, and I wasn't looking for comfort. I think that was the biggest thing.
Yeah, maybe I should have put that.
I think for me, it was more just understanding. And I would say for years, I did not talk about the emotional side of things of it because I didn't understand it. I hadn't yet processed it, or really, really given a name to it. Like, I don't think I had actually labeled what those emotions were or what was bugging me. I just knew that I needed to work on myself. That was the biggest thing. So I probably went about a really random backwards, but I think that's how everyone does it. Like you got to find what works for you, right? And sometimes some of that's going to be in isolation. Some of it's going to be with the support of others. And I think it really just kind of is as you go along. And I would say a lot of the parts that I've processed over time, like if you had asked me, like even a year in, 2 years in, like I would have had no awareness of, like, it might have taken me 5 years to even like for it to dawn on me that that's like a part of the thing that's been bugging me or a part of the emotions tied with the experience. It's like learning and growing for sure.
Yeah. I'm going to guess that prior to this experience, you weren't, let's say it this way. You weren't an emotional person.
Oh.
Like, would you say that? Like, would you say you were very in tune with your emotions? Because it sounds to me that like this experience has bumped your emotional intelligence up like a little bit, especially for yourself.
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say, like, I would say yes. I was perhaps like a person who was like fairly in tune to where I was. Now, I wouldn't necessarily had really like stuff that rocked the boat all too much. Like I've been very lucky in my life to avoid like, but definitely there's been challenges throughout my life, but I've been very lucky, I would think, in the long run, to have like be on the minimal side. I think to a certain degree, I would classify as like, I would have subdued them. Like I would have been aware they were there, but like I was not a person to necessarily say, oh, this is anger, and then process it that way. Like I would have been like, like aware that I was angry, but not necessarily realize that like acknowledging it kind of helps with the like diffusing it. Right.
Perhaps. No, I hear you.
If that makes sense.
I'm the same way.
And like I think being a bottler, like I've never been a person to speak to what my emotions are. I think I'm probably one that's like it's fairly visible because like if I'm really angry, I'm like completely silent and people are freaked out because I it's very different behavior, and it's not like it's abnormal behavior for me. So usually, like, I think it's pretty obvious when I'm having pretty strong emotions, in the sense that it shows. Now, whether I've been able to give voice to them, that is something that I've had to learn and grow into. And I would say I'm still probably pretty bad at it, but I'm getting better. I'm getting better.
Yeah.
Now, awareness, like, of where I was and like myself and what state I was in, how I felt about different things. Yes, I think that was there, but not necessarily openly talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I got 2 more questions for you.
Okay. Bring it on.
Have you seen a bear since?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And walk me through those feelings when you've seen them.
Well, I remember the first one I saw after, and it was a bear. We were going camping. And it was a bear on the side of the highway, very close to the campground. And I remember everyone around me being like, "Are we going to turn around? Do you want us to turn around?" And I was like, "No, like, we're going camping. It's okay. Like, if I get nervous, if need be, I'll sleep in the van. Like, it's not a big deal." And I think I ended up sleeping fine much of that night. Although I have been in situations where I know I have been on edge, and not slept very well because of just a bit of anxiety. Mostly because just being in like situations that I didn't necessarily plan for, but survived one way or another. I remember seeing the bear, and like, bears on the side of the highway, like, generally have some familiarity with humans. And I remember like them kind of slowing down a little bit, and the bear looking at us and just being like, "Bring it." Like, kind of the like, I really couldn't care. Like, if you bug me, then like we might have an issue.
Yeah.
But more so like really kind of indifferent to the vehicle, right? And I remember just thinking like, that bear has so much more power than we give it credit for. Like, if it chose to, like, it could just tear this van apart. Like,
what could you do to stop it?
Yeah. So definitely. And I would say, like, even when I've had one where it's like been out, like, I remember staying at a cabin and there being bears on the outside of the property because they were eating some of the grass, and it was a mom and a cub and a yearling, or maybe it was the mom and a yearling. I can't remember the exact details, but I remember being like, okay, like, just saying to the people around me, like, you know what, like, I'd prefer to just have someone to walk with, and like, I'm gonna carry bear spray. Like, you know, I'd really appreciate if like folks like just, you know, are a little more cognizant of this, and people are like, the people I was with were really good. So it wasn't too big of a deal, but definitely like just more of your spidey senses are going, and the hair maybe up on the back of your neck is just a little bit more like, make sure you're totally aware of where you are in your situation and your surroundings. But yeah, not overly anxious. Now, I haven't had one where I would say like I've run into a bear in the middle of the bush. I've yet for that to happen, and I have no idea how I'll react. Part of me, like, I could maybe faint. I could maybe run the other way, or I might be like, bring it on, like, or I might be pissed and like chase after it. Who knows? Like, I have it's there's no way to tell. Even after being through what I've been through, I have no way to tell of how I'll react. But I'll process it and I'll deal with it when I get there, and try to prep myself as best I can in the meantime.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm sure at least half the people who would have been through what you went through could probably not handle seeing a bear at a zoo. So the fact that you are camping and seeing bears in the wild and not cowering from that is just like unbelievable and unfathomable to me. I probably would never like be able to understand truly what that is like. It's like, it'd be like voluntarily going to hell. You know what I mean? Like voluntarily like opening like your worst nightmare. But at the same time, I get it. Like, your love for the outdoors is, if it's as strong as mine, like, you've got no choice.
But I think it's also something that you build up to, right? Like, it's not something that I've done on it like right away. It's taken time. Sure. So it's like, even if I was to fall off my bike and like have a really bad wipeout, like, I'm going to be hesitant to get on that bike for probably the first little bit. And then it might take me like 20 bike rides before I feel like I actually have my feet underneath me. And I think it's the same thing with this. Like, I wouldn't say there's definitely some anxiety still tied with it, especially like it depends on the bear. Like, I don't ever really want to encounter a polar bear unless it's like behind some safe, like sure. There's some safety there. And even with grizzlies, like I was just out recently in BC and like grizzlies give me more anxiety than a black bear because I know my odds, like you don't fight off a grizzly. Like,
you pray to God.
Yeah, you hope it gets bored with you and leaves. Yeah. So like definitely more anxiety associated with potentially encountering a grizzly than if I was like to encounter a black bear. Because at least I know what my odds, well, not what my odds are, but like at least now I kind of know what I'm potentially having to deal with if it's a black bear. Maybe it feels like it's a little bit more feasible if I was to have a really bad encounter versus a grizzly where there's unknown there, right? Like, so I think it all depends.
Here's my point, Laura. And we're going to use the bicycle example, right? You fell off your bike, you scratched your elbow. A lot of people would have just been done with bicycles.
Oh, totally.
I'm done with bicycles. I'm done scratching my elbow. I don't even want to come near one. But what makes you incredible is the fact that you scratched your elbow and like you know that you can't just like hop back on and start riding again. Like you graduate yourself to the exposure, but it's just the fact that you're willing to do that. And I think that's incredible. And I think many people can learn from that. And I think that's just what life is about. If you live your life in fear, I think you're missing out on a lot. And I think the fact that you're willing to scratch your elbow, get on the bike, and still know there's a risk of scratching your elbow, I think that's incredible. So that's my point, Laura. All right.
And it's a very good point to have. It's true. Okay. I just always ramble on because I'm such a hopeful, rhetorical responder.
Good. And I think that's contributing to why you are as resilient as you are. So yeah, take that. So the last question, like your experience could be very metaphorical for a lot of hardships that people may go through. They may get burnt by a thing and are afraid to face it when they know they should. And I'm curious if you've got like a mantra that you carry forward from this experience or even before this experience, but just a mantra for like struggles in your life or anything that's difficult that you know you should do, the demons you know you should face that you may have some hesitation for. But is there a mantra that you have? Is there like a code that you live by? Is there a,
I think, like, I wouldn't say there's a specific line or anything that particularly drives me or is like the mantra to like what I've gone through. But I think, you grow or there's real possibility to really treasure the time you have as a result of all those experiences. Like, not like, you can go through pointless pain. You can go through pointless strife and all these things. And really, I think for me, I think a lot of it I've been like, okay, so going from that, maybe gives me more appreciation in what I have or the time I have or the experiences or definitely I would say, it gives me a sense of pause to take those moments and like maybe express, like say to a family member, oh, like I love you, like when they leave or something like that. Something so simple, but gives me that opportunity to really embrace what, like, I managed to make it through, whether there is a reason with it or not, who knows, but let's take the opportunity and make the best of what time I have left, I guess would be kind of how I look at it. And really, I think all that experience builds character.
For sure.
And I hope I get to the stage when I'm older, like my grandmother, and I just don't give a shit. And I'll just tell you exactly what I think. And there's no hesitation. And like, it's like, bring on the world, like whatever, like this, I do hope, I'll lose my filter as time goes on. And I'll just be totally able to embrace it without any kind of hesitation whatsoever. But I think there's so many, like, when I look at things or when I read things or I visit new places, there's always something you can take away from that experience or whatever event that goes down, or something you can just walk away and be like, that was really cool, or that was really neat, or this is something I've learned as a result of that. So like when I think about my bear experience, it was awful. Like I would never wish it on another soul. But I learned a lot about myself as a result of it. And if I hadn't gone through that, there's chances I would have learned through other ways or other experiences. But I think to a certain degree, like, I appreciate that. And like, I don't know if I'd want to give up that experience for all, like, for the things I've learned. Like, I know I'm a lot more capable of like recovering or just facing the impossible odds, right? Like dealing with stuff that like you don't know you're necessarily going to come back from, and like having to face it on. Like I have a lot more, I guess, respect or belief in myself. Not that I didn't have it before, but like it's just further strengthened by the fact that like, like I know I can achieve like really imaginable things or come back from really awful things, or that like I can live through it and make it to the next day. Like, day by day, like, I don't think you have to do grand leaps. Like, if you're going through something hard, just focus on the next day and what can you do that one day that's something like and it might be as simple as getting up and having a shower that one day if you're having a really awful day. So, like there's so many lines and quotes out there that I find inspiring and that motivate me. And I'm pretty sure if I scrolled on my phone, I remember at one point my dad being like, you have all these quotes on here. And I'm like, well, they're all so cool. Yeah. They all resonate with me one way or another. And I think that's one reason why I do public speaking or like I interact with this peer support group is because like, I really find that stuff neat. I find it motivating and I find it like helps me every day. And like just gain a little bit more gratitude for where I am and what I've accomplished. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Glad
you think so.
I know a tough cookie when I see one, and it didn't take me long to realize how tough you are. And it's no. I'm not surprised that a person like you went through what you went through and you're still smiling today and still have a vigor for life and a vigor for the outdoors. And I think like if there's one thing I learned from you, from this story in particular, was that so there's like what you can control and then there's what the universe is going to do, right? And you never know what the universe is going to do, but at least you can do your part. Like the whole time, you never knew how long or what this bear's intention was or how long it was going to go. But you kept a cool head and you did your part. And I think that is such a good metaphor for life. Like applying for physiotherapy, you just do your part. You don't know what the universe is going to do, but and things like that. And I think, that can be applied to many other aspects of life. And I think a lot of people can find strength from that. And I think I'm so glad that we spoke today. And I think your story needs to get out there because a lot of people can benefit from hearing it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's totally okay to fall down. You can always climb back up no matter what yeah. You might stay down there a little while. It might take some time to process it all.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, it's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.